This video is going to be a rant. I remember the first time when I saw Black Mirror. It was season 3, the first Netflix series. And while the first episode was very social media, bad social commentary, I really enjoyed the second episode, Playtest. It was a perfect blend of sci-fi and suspenseful thriller, and it really ended on a Twilight Zone-esque note. Recent seasons of Black Mirror have been very hit or miss for me, and I struggle to even think of an episode that I like more than Playtest or the first 2 seasons. I even had to look up what episodes there were because I couldn't even remember most of them. Scrolling through these episodes now, I realized that there are some decent episodes in here, but most of them either have something deeply stupid like the vampire one, or they're just boring and predictable. And or the technology is an afterthought. And I personally really didn't like Beyond the Sea, even though Josh Hartnett is in it. But I just recently discovered there's a new season. So, out of obligation, and because there might be a gem in here, I decided to watch it, and what the fuck? Before I jump in and rant about my hatred towards the second episode, I do want to say that the first episode of season 7 is actually pretty good. Once the premise is set up and you know where things are going, it gets a bit predictable, but everything that is set up is actually paid off, and I have no major issues with it. The second episode, however, oh boy. Where do we even begin? It starts off decent, and then it becomes repetitive and pretty boring. And then it says, oh, tech did it, before launching into the stupidest ending to anything ever. This video will be about the second episode of season 7 of Black Mirror. The episode follows Maria, a woman that works at the R&D department of Dida, a Mars-like company, and she's like amazing at her job. During one of the tastings of a new chocolate bar, a former classmate, B-side Nicole Kidman, walks in. From this point in the episode, reality seems to shift before Maria's eyes, and she's the only one that remembers certain things happening a certain way or certain details. Like there's a whole argument about a chicken shop named Barney's or Bernie's or the other way around. Apparently there are 2 different versions of this episode, and Netflix just gives you a random one, which results in the name of the chicken shop being either Barney or Bernie in the original world. Super meta, because this episode is about the Mandela effect. It even mentions the Mandela effect and Monopoly Man's monocle out loud. How fun.
Maybe it's like the Mandela effect, where people misremember things, like the Monopoly Man wearing a monocle.
It's called the Mandela effect, by the way, because there's apparently a group of people who think they remember Nelson Mandela dying in the 1980s instead of 2013 when he actually died. Also, if in the discussion of this episode I get any of the details wrong, just know that that's not me actually getting them wrong. That's me being meta, and it's the Mandela effect. Back to the episode. Nicole Kidman's younger sister Verity starts working at Maria's company, and Maria is instantly super suspicious of her. Mostly because when they first meet each other 10 plus years after high school, she's very intense, but also because Maria tells her boyfriend that Verity used to be the school weirdo who spent all of her time in the computer lab. And she had weird hair. We also find out from Maria talking to her boyfriend that Maria was actually one of the popular kids, and she was in a group of people that came up with a rumor about Verity giving a hand job to a teacher. And then someone gave her the nickname Milkmaid. That's right, kids, this isn't just a story about the Mandela effect, it's also a Carrie-like revenge fantasy. As someone who has experienced bullying, I understand this kind of wish fulfillment revenge fantasy, but these kind of stories almost never say anything about the reality of being bullied or social rejection or moving on from that. And revenge didn't really work out for Carrie either, so... But it's a bit different here than Carrie because we don't follow the active victim of bullying. We follow the bully, or an accomplice to the bullying, years and years later. Maria, in a conversation with her boyfriend who seems very sympathetic to Verity's side of the story, says that she didn't come up with the nickname, it was Natalie. And then Maria tries to get in touch with Natalie. But uh-oh, Natalie is dead. And before her death, she was very paranoid and erratic, kind of like Maria, and was talking about things that weren't there. Maria then gets her confirmation that Verity is doing this somehow, And the episode, instead of escalating the stakes, just becomes repetitive and boring. Like the same situation plays over and over and over without any escalating. It's frustrating seeing Verity fiddle with her necklace multiple times right before something changes, and the protagonist doesn't catch on until very late in the episode. When she does notice that Verity is controlling reality with her necklace, instead of thinking of a strategy on how to deal with that, she just lunges at Verity and looks insane, basically, and gets fired from her job. Like, girl, I understand she can change reality, but maybe think about your actions a little bit. The questions we have so far are, did Maria bully Verity? Does Maria deserve to be punished for bullying Verity? Or maybe, I don't know, should Verity go to fucking therapy? And finally, how is she pulling this off? Well, we don't have to wait long for the answer, because after being fired from her job, Maria waits for Verity and follows her home and breaks into her house. She walks through a room that's like 2 walls of server banks, and upstairs in Verity's bedroom, she finds the necklace. However, it doesn't work because it seems to be fingerprint locked. Verity comes out of her bathroom, and while Maria hides under the bed, Verity quickly notices somebody's in the room and she's like, you can come out now. Then she does the cartoon villain thing of explaining the whole plot and her evil plan to Maria. Because before Natalie died, she told Verity that Maria was actually the one that came up with the handjob rumor, which led to Verity's favorite teacher and safe haven being transferred away from the school. I mean, she wasn't just getting bullied because of the handjob thing, she was already a computer weirdo, you see, and she had crazy hair. Tangent, but I think casting an actress that looks like Nicole Kidman and then having her wear a bad wig for a photo that's on screen for 5 seconds is hilarious, and I appreciated that. Highlight of the episode for me. Anyways, turns out that Verity, and I hate her name in the context of this episode, by the way, has built a quantum computer that lets her shift between parallel worlds at will and where the thing she says has always been true. When she first built this computer, she did all the cool things she could think of, like being Empress of the Universe and marrying Harry Styles. But nothing she did could fix the hole inside of her that only therapy, I mean revenge, could fill.
Whatever I do, all that stuff, it's just still there. Just aching away.
So now she's using a supercomputer to gaslight her enemies to death. That's already stupid and wild for a number of reasons, the least of which is this enough server space to shift to another world, or can you barely run a Google search on this? I don't know. After Verity explains to Maria how she's gonna mentally break her, Maria's like, no, I was only a child. I made up this rumor because... She gives no explanation, basically. Verity doesn't really care about Maria's sob story about being just a teenager or her trying to throw Natalie, a dead woman, under the bus. And then Maria lunges at her in an attempt to separate her from the necklace. But little does she know she has like 500 necklaces because they're only a remote control for the quantum computer. But anyway, she gets a hold of the necklace again and she says, you have a knife and there are armed police here. Does the episode end here with Maria going to jail and Verity learning that revenge doesn't solve anything and you have to go to therapy? No. No, of course not. No, because the cops come in and as they're trying to handcuff Maria, she grabs a gun out of their holster and shoots Verity in the face. And then she puts Verity's finger on the necklace and says, the necklace works for me, which shifts her to a reality where the necklace does in fact work for her. Is this where the episode ends, showing us that revenge is only a path to chaos and destruction? And will Maria finally take responsibility for her part in hurting others? No, there's more. There's more. No, because she turns to the cops and says, Verity killed herself. I didn't do anything wrong. You work for me. You worship me because I am the Empress of the Universe. And then we cut to them in what I can only describe as Egyptian-style outfits, and they worship her. The end. And I immediately turned my TV off because I had to sit in silence to process this. And not in a Twilight Zone, Black Mirror, it really makes you think type way, but more in a... What am I supposed to do with this? kind of way. I've read arguments in support of either character, but never both. You're either Team Verity or Team Maria. And I'm here to tell you, I hate both of these people. They suck. Maria sucked as a teenager for spreading vile rumors about an already struggling weirdo, then never took responsibility for it, and as an adult she seems very unpleasant when she gets even minor pushback from her environment. Verity was once a victim, and I get it, hurt people, but this is just a sad power fantasy because nothing justifies gaslighting people to death. Also, after the first 2 instances of the Mandela effect, it starts becoming tedious and frustrating. We get it. And it wouldn't have been that bad if the ending didn't drop the ball this hard. And maybe it's just me, but I probably would have enjoyed it more if there was a downside to using the necklace, like Verity actually had to pay a cost for revenge outside of her dying in the end, which she obviously didn't calculate for, because why does her quantum computer not have a failsafe that transports her to a different universe when she dies? I mean, I would probably do that, but I'm not a computer genius, so... And the ending frustrates me mostly because then Maria gets the necklace and just gets whatever she wants. Like, have we learned nothing? Black Mirror used to be a speculative fiction sci-fi about things that could happen in the future, warnings about how we treat technology and each other. The stories used to be more grounded in emotional truth with technology as a backdrop, like how in Playtest it's really focused on his fear and spiraling into insanity. This episode does zero heavy lifting of explaining why these characters are behaving this way. It just tells us this character got bullied by this character and then expects us to go, of course, 2 + 2 does equal 4. Of course she built a supercomputer to torture and kill her bullies. Makes total sense. And of course, as soon as our protagonist gets a hold of the necklace, she also wants to be Empress of the Universe, or whatever the fuck that means. I mean, what about this character says, I crave absolute power, and also I will try to get out of a situation by shooting somebody in the face. And what about this character says, you know, being rich and famous and married to Harry Styles was fun and all, but I'll rest easier knowing my high school bullies are dead. Nicole Kidman wouldn't have called her wig person for that, is all I'm saying. But it gets worse, because while writing this, I actually felt kind of bad. Like, am I being too harsh on this episode? Did I misunderstand it? I love speculative fiction and sci-fi. Maybe my expectations were too high, and I'm just channeling my disappointment into hatred now. Should I be kinder to this episode? And then I found an article detailing interviews with Shanna Kelly and Rose McEwen, the actors in this episode, talking about how they were working through rehearsals. And they were working on a detailed emotional backstory about why these women were doing this to each other. And then creator/writer Charlie Brooker stepped in and said, guys, they're just petty. And both actors went, oh, okay, we get it. Petty, really? This woman built a quantum computer that can shift between the realities to gaslight her high school bully into killing herself. On the scale of things that are petty, this feels like it's slightly more invested than petty, but I feel like at the point where you're constructing a quantum computer and you've done all the cool things in the world, but you still want to bully your high school bullies into killing themselves ahead of going to therapy, I think we've moved beyond the word petty. This woman, Maria, actually starts out as petty and childish, and her boyfriend points that out to her. Good job, Charlie. But she then spirals into being a cold-blooded, power-hungry murderer, so I don't know. And finally, I want to leave you with the episode title, and I apologize to all the French speakers for butchering this, but Bête Noire, which in French means something or someone you strongly detest or to be avoided. Earlier in the episode, Maria's boss Gabe actually uses this term to introduce her to the company's owner, Mr. Dida. But it could of course apply to both characters. That's fine, I guess, until I read that the original episode title was going to be Ring of Truth, and Verity would have a ring instead of a necklace. Brooker decided against this episode title because, and I quote, I kept thinking that was a bit too on the nose. You named a character, the main antagonist of this episode about the Mandela effect and gaslighting, Verity. Did you think that was going to be subtle and slip by us? Honestly, the more I learn about this episode, the more I hate it. Thanks for watching.